Star Trek Picard Season 2 dove into the backstory of Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, revealing the tragic story of his mother, Yvette Picard, Madeline Wise. In its second season, Star Trek Picard sent Jean-Luc and his friends into the past to correct changes to the timeline caused by Q, John DeLancey. While trapped in the 21st century, Picard revisited his childhood home and confronted the demons of his past. He remembered his father, Maurice Picard, James Callis, as being abusive towards him and his mother. The truth, however, was a bit more complicated. Yvette Picard struggled with her mental health, experiencing mood swings and other symptoms she refused to treat. Maurice tried to help her however he could, which sometimes involved locking her in her room for her own safety. On one of these occasions, a young Jean-Luc unlocked his mother's door, and she later chose to take her own life. Picard blamed himself and repressed these traumatic memories due to his own guilt and the fact that he was so young. Star Trek Picard Season 2 presented this story via the jumbled memories of Jean-Luc as he tried to sort out the truth. The way Star Trek Picard presents Yvette's story is controversial for several reasons. Throughout Star Trek: The Next Generation and its subsequent films, Captain Picard maintained that he did not want a family. He focused on his Starfleet career and kept himself at a distance from his crew aboard the USS Enterprise D. Star Trek Picard Season 2 suggested that Picard made this choice because of the father he believed was abusive and his mother's suicide. Yvette's mental health struggles and suicide ultimately became less about her as a character and more about the effect they had on a young Jean-Luc. On the one hand, it's understandable that the story would focus on Jean-Luc's feelings. The show is called Star Trek Picard, after all. But it feels like an odd way to explain Picard's reluctance to let people in, as well as disservice to Yvette as a character. Considering Picard is now an old man and is remembering experiences he had as a young boy, it's also possible, and even likely, that his memories are not entirely accurate. While this makes sense from a story perspective, it makes it even more difficult to parse out the truth. Maurice and Yvette were both presented as flawed individuals. They rejected the technology and medical advancements of the time, despite the fact that Yvette clearly needed help from medical professionals. As a child, Jean-Luc was particularly close to his mother, and she encouraged his imagination and his fascination with the stars. Jean-Luc did not understand that his mother was sick, so he perceived his father's attempts to help her as abuse. Still, Maurice Picard was clearly in over his head. He may have been desperate and genuinely trying to help, but he still locked his wife in her bedroom and left Jean-Luc alone with her. Because Jean-Luc remembered his father as being abusive, the two did not have much of a relationship as adults. Maurice also opposed his son's decision to join Starfleet, instead wanting him to tend to the family's French vineyard. Jean-Luc remained estranged from his father until the older man's death, and Picard regretted never reaching out. As Jean-Luc realized the truth of his mother's illness, he began to see his father in a different light, although Maurice had been dead for years by the time of Picard Season 2.